The title of this session is Creating All You Desire, recorded June 14th, 1966.
The subject, of course, is truth, God, and I preferably like to call it happiness, because in the end we discover that the God we're seeking is the ultimate happiness with no sorrow whatsoever. This makes God far more intimate, more knowable than just using the word God or some of the other words that have been used. The word self, with a capital S, is a much closer, a more meaningful word to all of us than the word God is. God, to each one of us, is the concept that we have, and more often than not, God in people's minds is the greatest person we could think of within our own concept, just the greatest of everything. And God is not exactly that. God we call the self because the inner self of each one of us is that God that we are seeking. The God we are seeking gives us the ultimate happiness because it is without limitation. Each and every one of us, here and now, is that unlimited being with no limits whatsoever, acting as though we are limited and fully convinced, most of us, that we are limited. And since God, or the self, or the very being that we are, is changeless and eternal, we can only be that and nothing else. We are right now that infinite being called God, pretending that we are not, setting up an apparency called the world, an apparency called diversification, otherness, and we have lost sight of the fact that we have set up this falsity called the world, and we began to really believe that this little false projection we have set up is real. But we can never, ever let go of being that which we really are, the infinite self. Now, all troubles stem from not knowing, from not accepting the infinite being that we are. So the purpose of my being here is to help you let go of the false concepts that we are limited beings. And the way I do that is to keep it as simple as possible by trying to show you that the only thing that covers up this infinite being that we are is the sense of egoity, the sense of ego, that I am an individual separate from the all. And the moment we start that separation, we start all trouble. So the reality is nothing but the infinite self that we are. All trouble is saying I am an individual separate from that one infinite all being. Therefore, the only practical methods there are those which help us let go of the false concept of being an ego, of being separate. There isn't a moment during the day that we are not practicing being an ego, unless, of course, we have the wisdom that we are not. And so the methods I propose are those that can and should be used all day, every day. We have so confounded ourselves so thoroughly by now that in order to undo this false belief that we are limited, we need a full-time givingness to this subject in order to realize what we really are, in order to let go of all the false ideas we have conceived of, basically that we are a limited body with a limited mind. Now, the first day, the key that I sort of threw out was, as one sees the world, so is he. As you see the world out there, so are you. At first, this might be quite shocking. The ego part of us rebels against it. But this can be used every day, all day, for checking ourselves to see what our consciousness is. It is impossible to see something out there that is not in our mind. There's nothing out there but our own consciousness. A master, a perfected being, sees only perfection. So if we would take this key and check ourselves during the day on all the especially negative thoughts and start looking within to discover the source of this, we will see that these thoughts are right in us. They are our thoughts. That the horribleness that we thought was out there is right in here. Because we are in a state of the world that is relatively a low state, most of us are far more with negative thinking because we accept negativity, and therefore we can undo that negativity by facing it, by first learning how to discover this negativity, by saying that if we see it out there, it's right within us, otherwise we couldn't see it, and then using it to let go of it. Now, using it to let go of it is the most important thing. So we look out there, and anything and everything we see that is not just right, we turn inwardly and we look for this very thing within ourselves, and if we look honestly, we'll discover that that thought was right within us, that concept is our concept, that it doesn't apply to the other one, it applies right to us. And then when we see it, we automatically let go of it because we are seeking truth, we are seeking happiness. And it's ridiculous to hold on to the things that keep us miserable. So the first one was, as you see the world, so are you. Since happiness and sorrow is probably the thing that we are most concerned with every day, happiness and sorrow can be used as a means of growth. I want to interject here that any one of these practical methods, if used constantly, will give anyone full realization, because there leads onto the very thing that's causing all the trouble. And if we undo that, realization results. Any one of these methods, if used constantly, will lead to full realization. on happiness and sorrow, all happiness is nothing but being the very infinite self that we are. All happiness has its source in the self. Anytime we are happy, we are merely feeling this infinite self that we are a bit more, and the more we feel it, the happier we are. We falsely attribute the happiness to the thing or the person out there. But when we turn within, we discover that this happiness has its source right in our very own beingness and is not dependent upon people or things, that we have set up a false concept that it is dependent upon people and things. So the source of all happiness, of all joy, is the self. But you must turn within, you must see this yourself. Anything I say, if you believe it, it helps you none. But if you will prove it out for yourself, then you will know it, and it will be most useful. All knowledge must be proven out. No teacher can give you knowledge. You have to dig it out yourself. You have to see it. You have to make it your knowledge. A teacher can only point the way, and each one of us must take it by himself or herself. So for those who are here for the first time, I think I ought to make a point of that. Never accept anything I say because I say it. Only accept that which you can prove out for yourself. Only then is it meaningful and useful to you. So you must turn within until you can see that the source of all joy is your very own self. This is a tremendous thing when you see it. Then all things lose their hold upon you. All people that you thought you couldn't live without, you need no more. You become whole and complete unto yourself. When you discover that all your joy has its source in your very own self. Now, on the opposite side, all misery, all sorrow has its source in the ego. All misery is nothing but ego frustration. All misery is nothing but the ego saying that my joy lies upon him or her or that having that thing. And if I don't get it, I'm miserable. Now, if we will use that every time we are unhappy, anytime we are dissatisfied, if we will seek the source of this unhappiness, we will discover that it's based on a concept of egoity, that I am an ego, and I want this, and I must have that, and so forth and so on. And we are not getting it, and therefore we are miserable. Then when we do get it, we feel happy only because we have let go of the limitation of needing something. And we fall back into the very self that we are. And we call that happiness. So to repeat, all happiness has its source in the self. All misery has its source in the ego. And by tracing either the joy or the sorrow back to the source, we gain a bit of wisdom, a bit of truth and move toward realization. Now I feel as though I've brought the new ones of us up to where we were last week. When you see the truth, it's very easy to come out with methods. Because you see everyone spending every moment of his time seeking truth. And there's only two kinds of people in the world: those who are consciously seeking it and those who are unconsciously seeking it. We here are consciously seeking it. I think I'll go into the realm of mind. And try to give you a key that is a very powerful and a very tremendous thing. And I'll put it this way. Think what you want, and that is all that you will get. Think what you want, and that is only what you will get. When we go into this instrument called the mind, we discover that the mind is only creative. The mind is only creative. The mind creates what we hold in mind. When we create things that we don't like, we call it destructive. When we create things we do like, we call it constructive. But the process is just the same thing. Mind is only creative. Too many of us hold in mind the things we don't want. I don't want this, I don't want that, and I'm afraid I'll have an accident, and I might not have enough money to buy this, and I don't want this to happen. The mind doesn't understand the word not, N-O-T. The mind works on picture thinking. When I say the word table, everyone gets a picture of a table. They don't get a picture of the word T-A-B-L-E. If I say shoe, you get a picture of a shoe. If I say not shoe, you're thinking not the picture of a shoe. And you will create a shoe. This is the basic error that most people make when they try to demonstrate, try to create something. So, hold in mind many things they do not want. And incidentally, this is the sad thing about fear. That which we fear we bring on only because we hold it in mind and create it. So, if we want a happy life, if we have anything that's bothering us and we don't like it, all we need to do is to let go of the thoughts of that thing, and it is gone. This goes to the extreme of the body. It's impossible to have a sick body without unconsciously holding the thought of sickness. The way to correct a sick body is not to think on the sickness, but to hold only the thought of health. And the moment we do that, the moment we have only a thought of health, there is no more sickness. It'll drop away instantly. So the key is to think only what you want. And you'll change your life in that direction that you are thinking. I guess I ought to add, we shouldn't qualify it. We should not limit what we want. We should never say through whom, by what means, through what method we would like to get that which we want. Once we do that, we are interjecting the ego. We are trying to direct the way this thing that we want is to come to us. We should let go and let God, let go, let the infinite find the way of getting to us that which we want. We should think only what we want, not through whom or by what means. And also, we must think in present time. Anytime we expect to get something in the future, we are creating it in the future, and that's where it remains, in the future. We cannot get things that we expect to get in the future, because the mind being creative will create it in the future. And the future is always ahead of us. It's never here. So that when we want to create something, we must accept it as having been already received. As the Bible says, before ye ask, believe that you have already received it. Anything we want, we must get the feeling that it is ours now. Not tomorrow, not in the future. It is ours now, and then we just let go, and we expect to pick it up. Any demonstrating done with concept of the future in it will always keep it in the future. To be more specific, if it is a thing, we should visualize it, see it, feel it, taste it, smell it, as though it is, and is ours now, period, finished, dropped. Many schools suggest that you repeat again and again and again. Well, repetition is necessary if you don't accept it the first time. But the very best way to demonstrate is to know that it is here and now and let go. Then it comes very quickly. But we must have the concept of the present. It is ours now. So we should always think only what we want. Never think that which we do not want. This is so simple. If you will do this, your life will be exactly the way you said it. Think what you want. Use that as a slogan. as a way in life, and you will become master over your life. You will have exactly what you are thinking. A master sees only perfection. Hear no evil, see no evil, think no evil, and there'll be no evil. Thou art that. Let go of trying to be otherwise. You can take credit for all the negativity you're creating, and that's very helpful too. When we create something that's negative in our life, we don't like it, we should look at it. Look for the thoughts in our mind that cause this thing to happen. And then if you develop this as a way, as a habit, it'll come very quickly. You'll say, now what did I do to cause this? And immediately the thought will come up and you'll say, oh. You'll smile and you'll let go of it. But that too is teaching one that we are nothing but creators. And when you discover that you're able to create sickness, accidents, poverty, it'll give you confidence that you can create. If we're having difficulties in life, we can use those difficulties just this way, by discovering that the source of everything is a thought or thoughts in our mind at some time previous. And when we see that, we know that we have created this negative thing, and then it will occur to us, well, if I can create something negative, all I have to do is reverse it, and I can create something positive. But everyone is creating every moment of his life, because he's thinking all the time. If things do not occur, it's because one time we can think yes and the next time no, and balance it out. But if the yeses are stronger than the nos, it'll come into being. Everyone is creating every moment that he's thinking. You cannot help but be a creator. So long as one thinks, he creates. Unfortunately, we are convinced that we can only create very slowly. If we were convinced that we could create instantly, things would happen immediately. But take credit for all the negativity that we create. It shows us that we are the creator. Then we can consciously make a decision to stop creating that which we do not want and to start creating that which we do want. This will conflict with the concept that God is a creator. In the ultimate truth, God is not a creator. Only man is. In an absolute perfection, there is nothing to be created, nothing to be destroyed. Everything is absolutely perfect. So in the ultimate, there is no creation. Where the top God is There can be no creation and no dissolution. The only creator is man. When he doesn't know that he is God.